Well, you can depreciate the building. So that means if it costs $100,000 and you can depreciate it over 27 years, 27 and a half years. So that means you can take a chunk of that every year. And while most of the time real estate's going up in value. So even though the value of it is going up, you get to take some of that as an expense every year. John, a lot of people think rich people don't pay taxes. They avoid them. On this episode of Friends Talk Financial Planning, we're going to talk about how the wealthy avoid taxes and how you can too. Hi, I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel. I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
Here, I've got a field financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. Before we jump into how to avoid taxes like the wealthy do, I want to remind everybody to hit that subscribe button, like this video on YouTube, help other people find this information. And with that, looking forward to digging into this topic, Bridget, that we do hear a lot that people, wealthy don't pay taxes. I know, we've got some clients that are fairly wealthy, and I can tell you they do pay taxes. But they do also use some hacks, as you will, to minimize those things, right?
Yeah. So there's some strategies. Let's talk about one that we have, and that is have stock and hold on to it until you die, because then it gets a step up in basis. And we have a wealthy Chicagoan who I don't know if this is true or not, but some people say that this is the strategy that family was engaging, and that person is Virginia McCaskey, who was George Hallis's daughter, and she inherited the Bears. So they were saying, and she was in her 90s. She passed away recently. My regards to the family. She's kind of inspirational, actually. But yeah, she died. And so what I had heard from somebody, speculation, that the family was holding on to the team, at least in part, to wait for the step up in basis. Because when she got the team, when she inherited the team, I don't know what it was worth, but not billions. There are a lot less zeros behind that number.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the key things. And so to talk about that step up in basis, just so people understand what we're talking about here is, let's say I put $10,000 into an investment. I don't know, Apple or Microsoft, whatever. I bought a stock for $10,000. Now it's grown and it's worth $500,000. Right? So if I were to sell that, I'd pay taxes on all that gain. I'd pay taxes on $490,000. If I gift it to my children, then when they sell it, they pay taxes on $490,000.
Right.
But if I hold it and they inherit it, which sounds the same as being gifted, but it's not, they can sell that investment, $500,000, zero taxes on it, because the basis gets stepped up from $10,000 to the $500,000 it was worth at the date of my death. So that's one thing, and we'll see this. I love that example about the McCaskey family and doing planning around a gazillion-dollar sports franchise. I inherited a shotgun when my grandpa died, not a football team, but I was pretty happy with that too. But you think about this gigantic thing. Well, we've got folks, I'm sure you do too, where maybe we've got a client and dad, grandpa, the client's dad said, "Hey, I want you to have this. I've invested in some stock, and here I want you to have it." So I gift it, and then 2 years later, dad dies. And the son, if he had just hang on to it, son could have sold the whole thing, zero taxes. Instead, son's dealing with a big tax bill. Again, what do we call it? Like first world problem. Like, oh, geez, you got a bunch of money. But these are the things that the so-called wealthy people take advantage of. And it sounds like a good thing. Geez, I don't need this anymore. Here, daughter, have this. But really, it's, you know what? This is for you. I'm going to hang on to it until I die. And then you get it and you save a whole boatload of taxes. One of the strategies that regular people can use.
All right. So we got our second rich person. All right. And that is Mackenzie Scott. Okay. So she happened to be married to the Amazon founder, Jeff Bezos. All right. And tell us what she's doing.
Well, yeah. So one of the things about, that way that people who have a lot of wealth can avoid taxes is by giving it away in various fashions. We just talked about how giving it to your kids might not make sense. There are some places where it really does make sense, but one of the things is giving to charity and being charitable with it. Now, of course, you don't have the access to that money, right? So when I give it away, it's like, okay, it's not mine anymore. However, right, it's a lot of us have the inclination to do good and to help out different causes. And what Mackenzie Scott's doing is rather than just writing checks all over the place, she's using, and rather than setting up a foundation, which is super complicated and has a lot of overhead expenses, there's some benefits, but like, do I need to do a foundation? Somebody who's got hundreds of millions of dollars is probably a good candidate compared to somebody like, like me. He uses the same tool that I use, which is called a donor advised fund, which I kind of describe like a mini foundation for people that aren't super duper rich, and she funnels hundreds of millions of dollars in charity through her donor advised fund. And there's some tax advantages. She can put money into it, this sort of step up in basis thing, right? She can put some of that Amazon stock that has, no basis. She got it for, basically free, and now it's worth a gazillion dollars. Put it into the donor advised fund, get some big tax advantages. But it's one of those things, and I know, Bridget, that you use this with your clients as well. But donor advised fund sounds pretty boring. Yep, except for that's what people who are in the know are using to avoid taxes, right?
Yeah, and I gotta say, that is a client favorite. They like their donor advised fund because they get to be grantors, and it's pretty. Once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to deal with. So I really like donor advised funds.
Yeah.
All right,
So
we got another rich person, Peter
yeah,
Thiel. Peter Thiel, and you know what he did? This is smart, but geez, takes a lot of planning. He figured out how to put his stock. What did he start? One of those people.
PayPal, I think.
What was it? PayPal.
PayPal.
It's his start
Yeah.
PayPal. And he gets the stock shares in a Roth IRA. That's where he gets them paid out to. I think that I don't know exactly how he accomplished that, but he puts them in his Roth IRA, and then they go tax free. So when and you don't even have to, if you're the owner of the Roth IRA, unlike regular IRAs, you have required minimum distributions. Right now, at least with Roth IRA, you don't even have required minimum distributions. So you can just leave that in there to grow. Sell it if he wants, tax free, leave it in there to grow. Yeah. So that's, if you can figure out how to do that, and if you have the foresight. I mean, the problem is you start a business, who knows if it's even going to take off? By the time it's worth something and you go through these steps, it might be too late. I mean, a lot of us, when we're starting a business, we're just hoping it goes well. We're not trying to figure out how to put the stock shares in a Roth. What are your thoughts?
Well, and the thing that my mind kind of jumps to is I'll have people periodically say, geez, I want to own real estate in my IRA or in my Roth IRA and
Okay.
things like that's a common one. Running your, owning your business, it can be done for sure.
Yeah.
It's not like it's illegal. However, there are some real, very onerous requirements when you're doing this. Right. So you've got to be really careful and get expert help with this. So it's one of those things that you probably wouldn't take your startup business because there's a lot of red tape and it can be a big problem. And I remember, if I remember right, Peter Thiel, he was starting to do money, put money into Roth IRAs back when you could put like $2,000 a year in, right? Chunk, chunk, chunk. And then, of course, things took off for him. So one of the things, can it be your individual company? Absolutely, but golly, there's a lot of red tape and a lot of ways you can trip up. But taking things like, your risky stocks, the things that you're taking a flyer on, perhaps, right? And when it's a third party stock, not someplace that I own or work directly personally or have control over, then most, if not all, that red tape goes away. And you go, oh, okay, do I want to have in my Roth IRA, my CDs? Nothing wrong with that in the right situation. I mean, but you go, CDs aren't growing where, I'm going to put some money to some, penny type stock, or here's something that a friend of mine works at and I can get in and I can buy a lot of it for cheap and it's probably not going anywhere. But if it takes off and it's the next PayPal, I could have, I think Thiel had, he started with $2,000 a year and it turned into a $5 billion Roth IRA because it was PayPal or whatever, right? And then doing some other investing in those things. But, so it can grow to this giant number. And so putting your high risk things from an investment standpoint, I think you do the same thing. We talk about having a gambling account and, 5 or 10% of your money. Like it's fun to research and figure things out. And I've got this idea and here how this is going to go, right? Like the real money is invested in a diversified, primarily index-based portfolio. But you go like, listen, here are some places where, yeah, local companies or things that I'm passionate about, and taking those high flyers and putting those in your Roth IRA when you do hit a home run, that can be a spot where suddenly you've got, probably not $5 billion, right? But having several $100,000 of tax-free money, maybe, and if you had a grand slam, you get $1 million. I mean, those are the places where it happens. So I'd encourage people to think about, where we talk about asset location, where am I going to have my high risk things? Roth IRA is a great place for them for avoiding taxes too.
And you mentioned real estate. So let's move on to our next idea. And we see, I don't have to even mention names of people that have done this. I think everybody even knows somebody in their locality that's done this. That is
Right.
invest in real estate. And so I don't love real estate as an investment. I like the stock market a lot better because I think it pays better returns. However, the high side is pretty high for real estate. If you get the right real estate, it can really go up. So there's plenty of wealthy people who end up investing in real estate and do well.
Right. And that's, it reminds me of our friend Burt Whitehead saying that the real estate's made more millionaires in the United States and also caused more bankruptcies, right? Because
Right.
it works
Because of
until it
the
doesn't. But
leverage. Yeah.
this is one of the reasons why having real estate inside of your IRAs is not an awesome idea. There's a number of reasons why it isn't, but one of them is that when you buy a piece of real estate that has a building on it, you get to take depreciation on that building. And it's too complicated for us to get into and the time we have left here today. But basically, depreciation goes to offset a lot of the income that comes from rents and things like that. And so in real estate, and people who have enough money can invest in bigger real estate, and that depreciation really offsets so much of the income. In many cases, there's no tax on any of the income, and then you can transfer that building into another building and transfer that into another building, and potentially even take advantage of that step up in basis we were talking about earlier.
Right, right.
So it's complicated, right? I'm like you, I've owned real estate. I don't want to own too much more real estate from an investment standpoint, but it can be a great place to shelter taxes and to build wealth if it's the right fit for you. So that's one of the places that is available to regular people.
Yeah. And so I would say that the key factors that you just mentioned, one is while you can depreciate the building. So that means if it costs $100,000 and you can depreciate it over 27 years, 27 and a half years. So that means you can take a chunk of that every year. And while most of the time real estate's going up in value. So even though the value of it is going up, you get to take some of that as an expense every year. And
Right.
then when it's a complicated tax situation when you sell, but a whole part of that is going to be capital gains. So again, and that's at a lower tax rate. So that's a big advantage. And then the other thing you mentioned is even the capital gains, you should be able to do what you mentioned is it's 1031 like at exchange. I know I said that fast because that's the last thing I want to get into a lot of details about. But you can do a like kind exchange if you want to buy another investment property.
Yep, that's great. So
Yeah.
I think it's a great place to wrap things up here, right? Use some of the tools we talked about here, from Roth IRAs to donor advised funds, giving to charity, right? Holding on to things until you die to pass to heirs. A lot of the tools that the wealthy people use to avoid taxes are available to all of us. And with that, I'm John Shear, and I've got a family financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. John and I are both members of the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. And so if you live in a different area and you're looking for an advisor in your area, other than John and myself, you can check out acplanners.org.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button.